Good day, everyone. Let's start this new Ghent Workgroup webinar, where the topic today is packaging for brand owners. And first of all, let me give you some housekeeping. This is a webinar. You all are muted, but you can see on the sidebar of the meeting question area, where you can post any question that you have during the presentation, and we will get back to those questions at the end of the presentation to answer all of them. So I'm Christian Blaise. To give you a little bit of background about me, I started as being a prepress manager at a printer and converter in gravure for packaging, and then I moved to Nestlé, taking care of the graphic chain for Nestlé. And then I've been sales account manager for Focus and started my own company, Bleu Process, 12 years ago. And since last year, I'm the founder and CEO of agileStreams, which is a consulting company giving consultancy and integration in the graphic arts. As the matter of the Ghent Workgroup, I actually joined in 2003 on the first packaging meeting when the Ghent Workgroup started to talk about packaging, being a brand owner at this time, being at Nestlé. And since 2004, I'm co-chairing the packaging subcommittee. And since 2013, I'm also co-chairing the cross-media subcommittee, and I've been newly appointed actually last week at our Ghent Workgroup meetings in Sofia as the new marketing officer for the Ghent Workgroup.
Hi, my name is Lieven Plettinck. I have a long history in the graphics art development. Starting with Barco in '86, so I already have a lot of gray hairs. Currently, my position is I'm Director Software Engineering, more specifically responsible for integration with partner companies. I joined the Ghent Workgroup in 2008. At some point in time, I became co-chair of the packaging subcommittee. And besides this, I'm also active in other industry standard organizations like SIP4 and the International Standard Organization Technical Committee 130.
So let me give you some information about the Ghent Workgroup and actually who is the Ghent Workgroup. So we are an international organization made up of graphic art users, association, and developers. And this is a cross-section of the international graphic arts community best minds. So let's say that in the room, we are up to 50 people, depending on the meeting, having a long expertise on those topics and trying to find the best way to help you and to help the market in the graphic arts. In terms of members, we have 4 categories of members. So originally, this is run by the association, the different national associations for the graphic arts. And we have also graphic arts users, what we call industry members, who are people active in the industry and using the technology for the graphic arts, and that can help us in defining the best practices. We also have software and hardware vendors. So most of them in the graphic arts are part of the Ghent Workgroup and help us to build what we're doing. And we also have educators who are basically universities that helping us to spread the message around the globe. So here for the Ghent Workgroup, you can see the vendor members that we have at the moment, the educational members, the different associations that are members of the Ghent Workgroup, and the industry members. So all of these people are working together in different subcommittees. So we have a lot of subcommittees tackling different aspects of what we're doing. Some of them are less active now, like one we had on the very beginning of the group, like the office document printing, which is less active now and is, let's say, on hold. And some of them are very, very active. Obviously, everything turns around the specifications, which is the core part of what we're doing. And the packaging group is one of the active groups now, and this is what we are going to cover today.
So like any organization, we have a mission. What is our goal in life? For the Ghent Workgroup, our mission is to develop and maintain process specifications for best graphics and the best practices in the graphic arts workflows and promote their acceptance and use in the international graphic arts community. That's a mouthful. Let's break that down a bit. We want to collaborate and help our partners to be successful, to introduce practical workflow tools, streamline daily production tasks, provide technical background, create specifications, share best practices, and develop industry solutions. Okay, that's all high-flying words. What does that mean in practice? Basically, if you would look at the Ghent Workgroup website, you would see that we build 4 types of deliverables. The first deliverable, probably historically the oldest as well, is the specifications. What are specifications? It's rules and limitations imposed on PDF files to make them reliable in the data exchange between different parties in the supply chain. Going hand in hand with that are the application settings. The application settings explain to the user, and you can find these on the Ghent Workgroup website, what the settings are for different popular applications in the industry to be able to check and eventually also correct the specifications in pre-flight tools. One of the very interesting parts of the deliverables of the Ghent Workgroup are test suites. These are easy to use PDF files that allow a user to test compatibility of applications and workflows with recent PDF standards. The most recent one, the Ghent Output Suite 5, for instance, will test compliance with PDF X4. And finally, the job tickets. This is all about how does metadata travel with the PDF to automate workflows.
So let's start talking about the packaging graphic chain as a brand owner. And to come back to the beginning of the history, so I joined the Ghent Workgroup as a brand owner when I was working at Nestlé. I've been approached by the group when they wanted to tackle the packaging aspects of what we were doing at the Ghent Workgroup. And we as Nestlé identified the power of using those standards with our suppliers. So basically, the first thing was, if you look at the process, and I will show you that just after that slide, the process that we are going to put in place when you use standards is that it's not different from one brand owner to another brand owner, nor from one supplier to another one, which was at some point a nightmare for both parts, like the brand owners working with their suppliers or one supplier working with many brand owners. Using the PDF as the file format for exchange helps us to overcome software types and versions. Like when you're exchanging a native file, you have to be sure that it's the right version of the software, that you have the correct platform, that you have all of the things like having the fonts and image, etc., which was at some point some nightmare to manage. And the thing also is that the process that was put in place in that case, and all the files that we were exchanging between all the stakeholders of the chain were usable by any supplier, not being completely targeted to one specific supplier, not being able to be suitable for another one. And then we could also have all those files be able to be read by us, like using a standard Acrobat or even Adobe Reader, being able to see those files instead of having to install some specific software from the graphic chain. And that was something was very important for us. And also when we've been approached, the idea was just we wanted to lead the change. We didn't want to follow what was going on. So that's why we really wanted, as being a brand owner, to be part of the Ghent Workgroup and drive this. So coming back to the process is like at some point it becomes a nightmare, because here, if you can see, having here 3 brands and 4 suppliers, for example, then you have brand A working with those 4 suppliers. So you have to send the files to all of them. You have your way of working, and they might have to adapt that, because that's your way of working. On the other end, you can have one of the suppliers working with multiple brands, and if all of them, they come with their way of working, their file, etc., at the end of the day, this is the result, which means that you don't know, there is no unique way of working. This is very complex, and it doesn't help either the brands on one side or the suppliers on the other side. The choice of the PDF is, if you compare this to the native application, as I just mentioned before, is like you have some universal file format. And even now, even more than this, this is an ISO standard. So this is not owned by any of the vendors. This is completely vendor neutral. This is self-contained. That means that you don't have to take care of, do I miss the font? Do I miss the images? As long as the PDF has been correctly generated. But if you use, again, Workgroup application settings, that shouldn't be a problem. And it's very compact, and this is behaving very well with all of the environment that we know. And this is very important in terms of the compatibility that you need for your processes. If we look at the different standards we're relying on the Ghent Workgroup for the things we're working on, is we start with the PDF standard, which is that big shell that contains everything, where, as you can see here with the different dolls, you have the PDFX standard, which is the subset of the PDF that is completely designed for the graphic arts. And by the way, if you want to know more about PDF and PDFX, we had a session earlier in that Ghent Workgroup webinar series talking about this, and you can go on the website and you can watch that on the catch-up webinar, let's say. From that PDF extender, this is where the Ghent Workgroup comes in place, where we completely based on PDFX, and then we adding some other checks and best practices among these to have our standard, which is again more restrictive, and that goes up to a workflow specific for a supplier or another one, which could rely on the Ghent Workgroup as long as this one is more restrictive than before. That means that if you use the specification of the Ghent Workgroup and you compliant to this, you're by default then also compliant to the PDFX standard. So coming back to the work we did, is the first start, as Lieven mentioned, is to build the specifications. So that was a joint effort between different stakeholders when we first built the first baseline in 2004. And major brand owners in Europe and the US have been involved, as well as leading packaging prepress and converters. And at that time, this is where we started to build a specification for the upstream, so from design to prepress, and downstream, from prepress to press. After that first baseline, we continued the work to build the new specification with lots of evolutions. Currently, the specification that we have in the Ghent Workgroup packaging are completely in line with the other specification. And one major thing is that we're fully PDFX compliant in terms of PDFX4, which is the standard that we follow in the packaging market. The other way that I mentioned just before about the process nightmare was also to streamline that process. And so this is where you can use the work that we did at the Ghent Workgroup, as Lieven mentioned earlier as well, with the application setting, which are available for most applications that we are using in our area. And these ones are either giving you the information and settings for creating your PDF, as well as pre-flighting them to be sure that they're completely compliant with what you're expecting. And these ones are downloadable on the Ghent Workgroup website, and as all the work that we do, it is completely free. Next thing is, after streamlining the process, is also being able to evaluate the process. And that thing about the evaluation of the process is that the Ghent Workgroup is also providing tools which are completely perfect to evaluate the quality of the process, even if you're non-technical people. The example that we have here on screen is this is one patch of the Ghent output suite. And for example, here, this is having a look on the white overprint. And the thing is, we have those patches in some suites that you are going through the different tools you are using or your suppliers are using. And you can just run this or make proofs or make plates, print, etc. And this is very easy to understand if everything is okay or not, because if it's okay, then you see the patch and that's it. As long as you can see a cross on top of the patch, that means that there is an issue. And by using the Ghent output suite, you have all of these patches that you can use to evaluate the process, as well as the explanation of why this has happened, and most of the time how to fix it. So this is really useful to evaluate your suppliers as being a brand owner. You're not a technical person, or you may be, but even if you're not technical, you can use this. You can ask your suppliers to run them, and you can see if everything is going well on their side. One thing that is really important in terms of the packaging graphic chain and what we do is that there is a strong need for automation. And the main reason, because we can think of the automation as being a way to increase productivity, which is obviously interesting, but also that ensures the quality of the final product. By having some automated solutions that can understand what is inside your PDF and be able to do what you expect them to do is very important. And for example, here on the screen, what you have here is like by using some mechanism that we built at the Ghent Workgroup that you can use. The idea is to be able to use the same file for production, but also using that same file for viewing of our approval process, which is very important, because in that case, you don't have to split that into several files. And this is very key to reduce the errors that you can have in the process. To explain this, I will give the hand back to Lieven, who is going to talk a little bit about all these things of the automation and the processing steps, which is one of the big topics that we worked the last years, and which is the foundation of all of the next things that we're working on at the packaging group.
Okay, thank you, Christian. So yeah, to kick in an open door, just put a slide here saying that packaging is more than printing. Probably that's true for any printed product, that there is more than printing, but I think in packaging it's more obvious or more outspoken, or it's more complex than in many other parts of the graphics arts industry. Packaging by definition is 3D. It's not a flat product, but it has a certain shape. There are special finishes like embossing. There are foils. There are varnishes. So it's a quite complicated design and production process. And there is a there's a massive amount of data that goes along with that, and all of that data have to be carefully managed and have to be correct and verified to make sure that we come to the final end result. So there's many aspects to this, and in the packaging subcommittee we started by chipping stones out of that wall. There are many things, but one of the first, well, the action items that we took and brought to an end result is what Christian was referring to as processing steps. So what is processing steps? It's a standardized way to embed data for additional production steps in a PDF. And when I say additional production steps, then I mean production steps that are not the actual printing of the packaging or labels. When I say packaging, please see this in the broadest sense of the word. It could be packaging, it could be labels, could be flexible packaging, could be corrugated boxes, could be folding carton. So I think you got the picture there. The fact is that people have been embedding those kinds of data in production PDFs for already a long time, but the method to do that was totally not standardized. It's not standardized in the industry. It's not standardized between suppliers in the supply chain. It's not standardized even in the larger groups. There were different ways of doing things. And if you have people doing the same thing in different ways, you create a problem of interoperability. So it only works correctly when all of the, well, both sender and receiver are using the exact same assumptions. And that's what this standard is trying to address. We want to have a reliable data exchange with predictable results meaning no error, for embedding additional production steps in the PDF. The initiative for this was taken in the Ghent Workgroup, and within the Ghent Workgroup with the different participants from the industry, both vendors, but also users and the other parties that Christian indicated. We put together a technical proposal that kind of makes sense, that was implementable, and that was supported by the vendors in that group. From Ghent Workgroup, well, Ghent Workgroup by itself doesn't develop formal standards, but since we were so convinced that this was good work, we submitted that to the International Standard Organization, and I'm pretty proud to say that by now this is an official standard that you can download from www.iso.org, and you have the number there. So you can actually download and see the text of the standard. I'm proud that this is a standard. I'm even more proud that by this time this is being supported by multiple vendors, including my own company, of course, ESKO, but also other companies, and Focus, Calas, Chili Publish, Hybrid Software, Global Graphics, and the list is growing every day. Together with the standard, I also want to point that out, from the Ghent Workgroup site, you can download a sample file which has all of that, which illustrates actually how this standard works, and that sample file was made by one of the members, Phototype. So I was talking quite abstractly about processing steps. without being specific, what kind of data are we actually talking about? But I think by now you have guessed already that this includes, amongst other things, structural data. So these are sometimes called CAD data, die lines, or whatever. And these die lines are there to describe how the 3D packaging element will be produced from a flat surface, a piece of folding carton in this material, in this case. And it describes production steps in finishing, cutting, folding, gluing, embossing. That's one type. So let me just run through these different types. We have another type that indicates braille. Braille that can be applied either during finishing, the die cutter or the folded gluer, or with an inkjet device. We have different types of processing steps that indicate positions where, for instance, certain graphic elements like the use by has to be applied later down on the filling line. We have these legends. We have these dimension lines that kind of go together with the structural data. We have the white printed layer, so the backing white, which is usually printed on transparent foils and metallic substrates. And we have the varnishes that can be applied on selected parts of the packaging. Okay, that was an overview, but I actually took this explanation in the reverse order. I first explained what we have been cooking, but I didn't say why we were cooking this. And let me just explain this using this slide. Why do we store these additional data that are meant for finishing, not for printing? Why do we bother to put them into the PDF? Well, the whole thing is, I could say this with a single sentence, it's to have a single version of the truth. Saying this in a bit longer sentence is, we want to have the PDF as a production master for both printing and non-printing data. Actually, the PDF that is the point of aggregation of all this type of information. So on the one hand, you have the conventional graphics content, images, logos, health warning statements, ingredient copy, going into the PDF. But you have that second stream of information coming from the bottom there, where structure, braille, foils, varnish, backing white also go into the PDF. That makes the PDF like the container for all the information, and that's what goes to the approval state, so that you know exactly, you see the whole truth of what the packaging will look like before passing that on to production. That same PDF which was approved, which is the container of all that information, is going to the production steps after that, where the data is split up again, obviously, into the data for each and every one of the devices. So this, by aggregating that information into one PDF, which gets approved and which is then used as the master for production, there is a big element. You avoid having parallel data streams that can get out of sync, and the wrong CAD data with the right print, or vice versa. So those kind of problems can be eliminated by using that particular workflow. Okay, so this being said, that was kind of the first brick in the wall that we addressed, but there is more. Packaging is also more than printing CMYK. The use of, well, brand colors are really important in the packaging area. Brand colors are a primary brand asset, and it's very important. I don't have to explain that. I'm probably preaching for the choir here, but it's crucial that this gets handled correctly. And that, as a consequence, or the technical implementation of that, means that a lot of spot colors are being used in production. But in PDF, spot colors are rather vaguely defined. If you're lucky, within the PDF, you will get something called the LAB alternate color space for that spot color, which means that for the solid color, you can get an LAB value, which tells you how the brand color will look like under D50 illumination. But that's it, there it stops. That's what color management with CAE LAB allows you to do. That's not enough. And together with, well, this is not only Ghent Workgroup, this is also an active discussion and work item within the ICC and also in the ISO TC 130 Joint Working Group 7 and Ghent Workgroup. So multiple groups of experts are working together to try to solve this problem. And actually, this whole story, I'm showing this slide to make clear to you that this is actually part of the same problem. It's again, next to print content and processing steps, which describe finishing if you look at it from the surface, we also want to put the exact color definition for spot colors within the PDF container. Again, so that approval uses that single reference, and that's also the single reference that gets used by production. What came out of this is the by now also a standard in ISO. It's called CXF-X4. ISO standards, I apologize, but they also have they all use very difficult acronyms, but that's the way it is. And what does this thing do? It allows you to embed a spectral refractance curve of a spot color in a PDF. And that not only for the solid curve, for the solid tint, but also for intermediate tints and intermediate tints on white and on black. So that allows for advanced color management to handle the spot color definitions in a more meaningful way. Again, the same idea. We want to have reliable data exchange. We want to have predictable results. I already mentioned that this is co-developed by ISO TC 130, ICC, and Ghent Workgroup. It's by now a published standards, and there I would say we are still in the initial stages of the adoption curve in the industry. But if processing steps was a first brick in the wall, this is the second brick in the wall. All right, with that, Christian, I pass it to you.
Thank you, Lieven. So to the short conclusion of the things that we've seen today. So what are the benefits for the brand owner? Because that's typically that's the topic of today, packaging for brand owner. So by the work we do, and if you are going into all of the best practices and all of the tools that you're providing, that would be that the use of standards, so PDF, ISO, Ghent Workgroup, etc. Having some best practices, which includes the application settings. That also gives you some process control using the Ghent Workgroup output suite. We've seen the advantages of the processing steps in terms of the automation, And Lieven just talked about the accurate color management using the CXF X4 standard. So the idea is all of these things put together will allow the brand owner to keep a standard measured process under control. And that will also offers flexibility in the suppliers management, as we've seen earlier in the presentation, where as being standard, you also have a quite good way to be flexible with all of the partners you're working with. So we mentioned a lot of things, information, things that you can find, and the idea is where can I find that? So basically, it's the Ghent Workgroup website, which is gwg.org, and this is where you will be able to download all the application settings, the test suites. You can also download white papers, and we have some of them specifically been written for the packaging market, and we have a specific packaging landing page on the website where all of these information are gathered together, and where you can find everything on one page for the packaging workflows. You of course can stay informed about what we do. So we have Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn pages where you can follow the work that we do and where we are in the world to do this. Actually, that is probably a good source of information. And even more than just getting informed about what we do, there's also some opportunity to join the Ghent Workgroup, as you're very welcome to join us and be part of that effort. So the Ghent Workgroup will be the perfect place for you to learn, to network with the best experts in the area, of course, to market yourself or your company, I would say. Um, as before being a member, you can also, make a try. So you can join us as being an observer. So in that case, you can attend a meeting to see exactly what's going on. If this is what you were expecting. For the information, the next meeting that we will have is next meeting is in November in La Ciotat, actually near Marseille in France. And the one after is in February in Berlin, so in 2020. So in case you would like to join as an observer, you know where and when it is. You also can join a subcommittee. So we have the meetings where we work on a different subcommittee and debate, exchange some ideas, but we also have mailing lists where you can also do some work and give feedback. So you can join as a subcommittee member. And then at the end, you can obviously become a member, which will give you on top of this voting rights, which means that you can drive the things where you want them to go. So this actually concludes the presentation today, and we propose to go to the questions if there are some. How to ensure that all information that needs to be in a PDF, content, processing steps, colors is known beforehand so brand owners can validate the single version of the truth.
Okay.
I think instead of, no, that's enough.
I think I can take that. So what we are developing right now in the Ghent Workgroup as specification is pre-flight profiles that do checking on the validity of processing steps. So are the processing steps included in the PDF in a correct way, technically according to the ISO specification, and also for different types of products. We are putting together specifications which tell you what kind of processing steps are obligatory, which ones are optional, and which ones are not allowed. Just to give you an example, like for a label, we would, in the specifications that we are developing, it is required that you have a cutting processing step, so that it is indicated how the label will be cut from the substrate, but a creasing processing step doesn't make sense in a label and would be flagged as an error. Hope that answers your question. Is there some downloadable document with all packaging specifications for markings like measurements, varnish? I think there is a processing steps white paper which explains what the well, in more layman's terms, because I know reading an ISO document is not for the faint of heart, but the white paper is quite digestible.
It looks like you answered the question, Lieven.
Okay. So if there are any more questions, now is the time.
Okay, so yeah, we just posted some links from the Ghent Workgroup in the chat, where you can actually see the packaging page and also the link to download the white papers. So I guess that if we don't have any other question, we thank you all very much for attending today. We hope that this has been useful to you. And we hope to welcoming you to the next Ghent Workgroup meeting. Who knows? Okay.
Okay.
So thanks very much.
Thank you very much.